Story. We're now joined by Tankiso Motipi from the Lesotho Federation of Women's Lawyers, where she's a project manager combating trafficking in persons. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It was a heartbreaking story that we've just seen there now. How typical is it, though?
Thank you so much, Peter, for having me in your show. It's indeed sad, and it seems like cases of trafficking in persons are growing in Lesotho. There are more cases reported. The problem is that there is a lot of ignorance, especially amongst the rural young women of Lesotho. Most of these trafficked victims are those who have been promised domestic work in South Africa. So we still have a lot of work to do as Mosotho, as NGOs, as the government of Lesotho. But I believe we are getting there, because this month, as we know globally, it has been earmarked as the month of trafficking in persons awareness. So we have been in radio shows. Even next week, we still continue with the Ministry of Home Affairs to raise awareness amongst the whole community as to this modern day slavery.
Just how big is the problem? Do you have any ideas in terms of numbers?
The status really to it is, it's very difficult to have the actual statistics as to how many cases are there, because it's a very organized form of crime. You try, it's neither here nor there. When you think you have seen it in one district, another case is reported. So we just completed a study as the Federation of Women Lawyers, where we're trying to establish a baseline before the government implements as an action plan. In the study, about 18 cases, suspected tip cases, have been reported. So we have about 18, as was reported by the Lesotho Mounted Police Office. But we still have it's deeper than we know. It is deeper than that, because of the 18 cases that were reported, this one that was reported recently of a Mosotho girl rescued was not part of the statistics.
All right, so part of the story, as you said, is educating young people who are trying to get out of dire situations, seeking employment. But there must be other steps that are problematic, crossing the border perhaps, and getting into other countries. Are there weaknesses there that perhaps could be looked at by the authorities?
Oh yes, it's such a challenging situation, because we are 100% landlocked by South Africa. So sometimes it looks like it's difficult to manage it, because most people in informal who will do informal job in South Africa, they cross across the river. They don't cross in the border. There have been videos trending in social media where you see people just holding a mattress and then they just swim across like that. So it seems like it's difficult, but we are aware that there have been border patrols between the two countries where they are trying to curb the problem. But it's really difficult, considering the fact that we are landlocked by our mighty neighbour, and most of Mosotho, not just women, but even men, because even men are trafficked, want to see them across the border. And the fact that this is a syndicate, there are people who are already waiting on the other side of the river to poach or to illegally transport the illegal migrants into South Africa.
So give us what then happens once they've crossed the border. Many of those think that they're going to be going to places of employment. But what is the typical story that then happens after that?
Okay, as they share their stories, they are mostly trafficked by their family members. They will be recruited by someone they know, and they accompany them up to the border side. On the other side of the border, you already know there is Mr. So-and-so in a red cap or in a white cap who is waiting for you, and you go there, they transport you. It all looks normal until when they get to the residents in South Africa, where they believe it's It's where they'll be working. Remember, as I mentioned, most of the people trafficked are domestic workers. They get to the residence believing that that's where they're going to work, but then the trafficking starts there, and that's when they start to live in bondage. So we're raising awareness as the Federation of Women Lawyers and other NGOs across the country, together with the Ministry of Home Affairs, to sensitize the communities. We have radio programs to say this is how trafficking in persons happens. As I mentioned, we just completed the study, and the study showed the trends, the modern trends and patterns. The common one being use of social media, Facebook to be specific. There will be an advert to say you have, there's a job in Joburg or in Limpopo, we are paying such an amount, and it looks lucrative for someone who doesn't have any job at all the side. But when they get there, it's a trap. So we are educating them to say, also if there is a promise of a job, please verify with the Ministry of Labour here in the country before you leave, for them to verify if this is legitimate. Also, there are diaspora associations of Basotho in South Africa whom we can try to contact to verify. Sometimes it may be difficult, but it's very easy to spot when there is a trafficker luring someone, to just ask simple questions. Yeah. Where are you based? What's your company? And all that.
I suppose one of the difficult things is by crossing rivers, there's a whole issue of bypassing Home Affairs and getting work permits. And so it becomes difficult to involve authorities when you're traveling illegally.
Oh, yes, that's true. It's difficult. And it's even that's what causing them to be more vulnerable, because the moment they cross the border, when you try to say, hey, I want to go back home, I realize that now I'm your slave. Said, remember, you came here illegally. I'm going to send you to the authorities. And normally, even if he or she had identity documents, the trafficker immediately confiscates the documents and they are now in his possession. It's very difficult. Yeah.
How difficult is it for these girls in particular to phone home, contact home and say that this is my circumstances and this is where I am?
Actually, it's impossible for them to even call home because the moment they get inside the yard, the premises, whatever place where they are kept, every possession that they have, all the phones, anything, they are unable to have them in their possession, because now the master, who are the traffickers, now have them in their possession. So this is very scary. That is why we are raising awareness to say, let's try our best not to even find ourselves in these situations, because some people never even make it home. The lady you're talking about is one of the few lucky ones who were rescued, but there are those who still live in bondage. Some are already dead, because the other form of trafficking is that of harvesting for body parts. Wow. One is killed and then the body parts are sold to traffickers at a higher price. So let's be vigilant. Yeah. It's very necessary to call on to Basotho women to say, let us be vigilant. Trafficking in persons is real. Be on the lookout, because we'll be sharing messages even across our social media pages in the future. We also are going to establish a mobile app whereby cases will be reported via a mobile app that we are to establish sometime, maybe around March and April. And it will be easy for someone to, send a short message, maybe moments before they realize that my phone may be confiscated, to say I'm at such and such a place. And then FIDA can then alert the authorities and try to find the location. That will help a lot. Yeah.
You've mentioned that a lot of these girls are taken to the border by their family members, or their family members are doing the trafficking. Are they aware about what's happening on the other side, or are they too acting in good faith, believing that this is an opportunity, even if they perhaps have to cross the river and bypass home affairs?
Hey, most of the cases, Peter, you will be shocked to realize that the family members are very much aware of it. They were paid to bring victims. It's shocking because honestly, people are trafficked by those they know. So we trust them so much. You don't even report to people around you because this is your beloved relative. This is your beloved friend. But even if this is someone I trust, let's rather inform people around us. We are also going to train community leaders on this issue to say before, because sometimes we trafficked in the country. There are letters that the community leaders have to write to say, I know so and so, I'm allowing them to go to work. To interview, to hold more interviews, to probe further as to what type of employment is this? Where will this person be based? Can they show us their identity documents? Such will help because trafficking, before one is trafficked, they live in the community. And if we sensitize the community, if the community leaders are much aware of what is happening, together we will combat this monster.
It sounds as if, you talk about a syndicate, it probably, I mean, the people who are doing it are probably known by people at large. The idea that I can go and traffic, I must first think about who do I contact. Is there some knowledge by the community of who is doing this trafficking?
Unfortunately, not much seems to be known at this point, because even the relatives who are the ones doing, their relatives from the communities, they don't even know the final destination sometimes of where will this person go. And today I was fortunate to have a small chat with a taxi driver who happens to stay in South Africa, and then we talked about it and asked him, what is happening there where you stay? He said he's in Soweto. He's going back to South Africa sometime this month. And he said most of these girls or our sisters, when they get to South Africa, they have intimate relationships with some of the locals here or even foreigners. But it starts with being in relationships when they went there for work. After a few months, that's when someone will send him to a different location to say, you know what, I no longer have employment here, I'm moving to a different province. And that will be the last time they hear about such a person. Those who are likely to come back said, oh, I was trafficked. When I got there, if maybe he was from another country, he calls his countrymen and they start abusing her sexually every day.
So most of these young girls end up doing sex work, sex slaves, whatever word we can use.
They end up being sex slave when it started as a love relationship between her and her boyfriend. Yes. So there are just so many. It's very deep. There are just so many strategies that the traffickers use. Yes.
How young are some of these girls?
Last year, there is one girl who was rescued here who was 15 years. She was living here. She was from the district of Tabatzeka. She was living here with her sister. So the younger the victims are, it looks like the more vulnerable they are, especially when you talk of sex trafficking.
Tankiso, we're going to have to leave it there, but we wish you the very best with this endeavour, and let's hope that we can save our young girls and men, boys who are being trafficked. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me.